Excuse me. Sorry. Screwed your pen. Can I get it through? I'm here to tape down jokes. Excuse me. Sorry.
Thanks. I believe that everyone who was alive and of age on November 22nd, 1963 recalls that day. I've even read that people with amnesia, severe amnesia, are able to be brought back, unraveling their past by asking them about the moment of the Kennedy assassination. For later generations, it might be September 11, 2001. The trauma of the Kennedy assassination, I think, was no less severe to this nation than what happened that day. And I think that people also know that things changed in a very profound way, and that the efforts to restore the democracy and the country and the hope that we had in those times, revived by the likes of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy in the years that followed, and their assassinations also crushed that hope. That these killings were meant to destroy the dream, to destroy the hope, and to destroy democracy itself in the United States. The military-industrial intelligence complex, as Eisenhower's first draft warned about as he went out of office in 1960, has not shrunk from those days. Kennedy bucked it to his demise, and it has grown. We've had a bit of a regime change here in the electoral sequence, but to imagine that presidents who come and go, rather than the CIA and the Pentagon and the DIA and the national security state that sit and grow, is to live in an illusion. Presidents are just presidents, and they take any direct confrontation of that machinery, a machinery of death, and now with the international financial crunch and cash heist that's going on, the merger of corporations in the state is the emergence on a global level of fascism. And that's what we're facing in this period on an international level. And it relies on war lies. It relies on lies about political assassinations, on lies that control our lives. But there are still more of us, and we can think. And we have a tradition in this country of freedom, of democracy, of popular control. That's what we're supposed to be based on. It's not possible to be a bystander in a train wreck. People have to commit themselves, I believe, in this moment and in this time to taking back and restoring real, open, and transparent democracy in this country. We are working in Washington, D.C. We've had a shift of mood there, so there's an opening now for something we've been working on for the past decade, to have a Martin Luther King Records Act that would parallel the John F. Kennedy Records Act, that act has already released over 6.5 million pages of government documents. It's still a drop in the bucket compared to the 15.5 million records of 10 pages or more that are being made secret every year by this government. But it's much more than we could get out under Freedom of Information Act. And it looks like the subcommittee is going to go forward with hearings in March on this, and that we can begin to release some of the files that are still locked up on the life and death of Dr. King, and to establish a precedent. I'm also working on a grant to establish in Washington, D.C. a museum of hidden history that would tell the real history of this country and the hidden history of this country as it comes out and as it emerges, and to have that available to the millions of people that visit D.C. every year, to the young people, to have a research center that would collect the archives and the evidence and the documents, and to highlight the new books and new films that come out every year exposing hidden history. But Thomas Jefferson said that given a choice between a government without a newspaper or a newspaper without a government, he would always choose the latter, because he understood that the free flow of information was more central to the democratic process than was the machinery of government to carry it out. He always said that a government that was free and ignorant people that were free and ignorant at the same time was something that never had been and never could be, and that it has to be an informed democracy and informed choice. Instead, we have a government that buries our history since the inception of the national security state in 1947, a government that, based on fear alone, is taking away our own constitutional rights and that of rights of people around the world, and a government that really has set us on a path over the last 50 years with assassinations not only here but abroad, overthrows and coups in other countries, and turned much of the world against us, and things that have been done in the name of the American people that the majority of the American people don't even know about. But the people in other countries know whose hand was behind it and what they saw. And when you wake up on 9/11 and ask why do they hate us, there's a reason not to hate us as people, but to hate the policies that have been carried out in our name, and to hate the overthrow of democratic governments abroad, and elected governments and leaders that the United States and the corporations didn't like. And we inherit that legacy in blindness. It can destroy it, but if we face it and expose it and then challenge it, we can change how we run our own lives and how we can become again a shining example of a real democracy and real freedom for people all around the world. We can't shove freedom down somebody's throat at the end of a barrel of a gun. Thomas Jefferson said that we would probably have to have a revolt or an overthrow of some kind every 20 years in this country so that power would not accrete again into the hands of the few. Well, it's been a little bit more than 20 years, folks. And the power has been accreting to a tremendous level in this country so that very few people make the decisions that affect all of our lives. But that's not what democracy is supposed to look like, in my view, nor is it what it has to look like. And we can and should now think about rebuilding from the bottom up a democracy that not only restores our rights, that makes it possible for us to financially survive. Because the corporations that have merged with the government and carried off this huge blackmail out, is what I call it, of funds from us, and another $4 trillion, the secret that the Federal Reserve has already given to the banks before they revealed that they were going to give them less than $1 trillion. That money is just gone, and it's gone from our savings, it's gone from our lives and the productive capabilities that could keep it going. And so unless we rebuild this country from the bottom up, make communities work, make local currencies and economies work, make local energy work, we're not going to survive this any better than Kennedy survived here that day in Dallas. Because to the people that are at the top of this system, ordinary people don't matter. Ordinary people are expendable. Ordinary people are like the miners in the 1930s that were told, if the mine starts to collapse, push the mules out first, because it costs money to replace a mule. And it doesn't cost much to get another fellow to work. I think that, we should neither be the mules nor the mule pushers, but we should control our own destinies and have our own freedom. But to let this lie sit, the Dallas Morning News, when they finally took notice of us, and we were out here every year from the 1960s, a few years ago, called us a morbid necrophilic circus up here on the knoll. When they weren't just ignoring us or saying there was nobody here on days with hundreds here like this, they said nobody showed up. I don't know what they'll say today. But I said that if there was a circus in town, the clowns were the Dallas police and the Dallas press, who refused to investigate this murder properly. And, so you want to call us a circus, we know who the clowns are and we know who's running the ring. And it has nothing to do with the truth. And the majority of the American people still know that these murders are unsolved, that the people that are blamed for them are not responsible, and that conspiracies exist. William S. Burroughs, a writer, said that paranoia is having all the facts. And it's not a matter of, is something a conspiracy, or they had one show that was on TV, it was called Conspiracy or Truth, as if the two could never go together. On the other hand, conspiracy and theory, that used to be two separate English words, suddenly have joined at the hip. Well, you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you call everyone else a coincidence theorist. But the fact of the matter is that there were more than one bullet firing from two different directions, so unless you think several lone nuts showed up that day to kill the president, it was just a good shooting day here in Dallas, then there's some chance that they were coordinated. Maybe they didn't know each other, as the Post said, even though they know who they are to know each other. But if they didn't know each other, it's because the people hiring them to do the shooting didn't want them to know each other. That isn't the question, but I think that the truth is slowly seeping out. There's always new evidence, and we present it every year. There's hard audio evidence in the Robert Kennedy case emerging. There's new ballistic evidence in the John F. Kennedy case emerging, making the official story impossible. I did exhaustive work on other assassinations and assassination attempts, including the shooting of Ronald Reagan. And none of Hinckley's bullets hit Ronald Reagan, and he similarly is a patsy in the case. And other shots were fired. But there's evidence. There's a way to get at the truth. And we have a few speakers here from COPA to follow me, and then Dick Russell is going to wrap up and transition for the Lancer speakers. So I don't know if some of the folks are here that were going to speak for COPA. Let's see. Well, I don't know who it is. Okay. Well, I had asked some of the COPA speakers to come along, and they had indicated they might. But if nobody else is here, I'll ask Dick Russell to come, because I know Dick's here. Yeah. Oh, I did. Oh, John Callan. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. Yeah, no, I didn't recognize you, John. Come up. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Thanks, John.
All right, thanks for accommodating us.
Thank you, John.
Hello, my name is John Kellen. I just have a few very brief remarks. The writer Ambrose Bierce once rather playfully defined truth. Nobody can hear you out there. Okay, well, how's that? All right, I'll start over. My name is John Kellen, and I'm glad to see you all here today. I've got a few very brief remarks. The writer Ambrose Bierce once rather playfully defined truth as an ingenious compound of desirability and appearance. I think that's also a fitting description of the government's account and most media accounts of President Kennedy's assassination. This is the 45th time that citizens from this city and state and from around the country and around the world have come to this plaza to remember John F. Kennedy on the anniversary of his death. About 200 people were here to remember President Kennedy in 1964 on the occasion of the first anniversary. Among them was an Oklahoma woman named Shirley Martin. Mrs. Martin was a great admirer of JFK's. She said it was hard for her to be here, but when the president died, she felt it was her, to be where the president died, but she felt it was her obligation. She also felt an obligation to find out who really killed her president. Shirley Martin was among a handful of Americans who read not just the Warren Report, but also the Warren Commission's 26 volumes of supporting evidence, all in an effort to hold Kennedy. Government accounts of JFK's assassination have all been ingenious compounds of desirability and appearance, but they have not been the truth. We know the truth is much more terrible. Thank you.
Thank you, John. My name is Dick Russell. I've come here from Boston today. I'm the author of 2 books on the Kennedy assassination. I remember I first visited here, I think it was in the 1970s, and I'll never forget the feeling of what it was like being on the grassy knoll. It was night, and there was a presence. There was something that had happened in this area that was just deeply felt, and it's great to see how many people are coming here today. I bring you greetings from Jesse Ventura. He was the governor of Minnesota. He was here 5 years ago for the 40th anniversary. He was the only public official in America who was willing to come here and speak about how he felt. I wonder where all our public officials are today. Jesse Ventura wanted to be here today again, but he has an illness in his family and couldn't make it. Just briefly, President Kennedy, the reason I admire him so much was because he was a man who was willing to grow and change in office. He took this country from the brink of what could have been an event where none of us would be here today, an apocalyptic missile crisis over Cuba, and was willing to make an accommodation with Cuba and with the Soviet Union at the time that would have changed the world. He was going to pull us out of Vietnam. His brother, Robert Kennedy, was maybe too compassionate a leader to run this country. They were all cut down, the two Kennedys, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. I don't believe any of them were cut down and eliminated by single lone nut assassins. There was a takeover of this country in the 1960s. We've never really recovered from it. We have a new opportunity today, perhaps, with the election of Barack Obama, and I pray that he's protected in a way that they were unable to do in the 1960s. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm happy to be here with you, and I pass this now to Randy Owen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick. Ladies and gentlemen, brief introduction. For those of you who do not know about JFK Lancer, it is an organization dedicated to finding out as much information as possible about the John Kennedy assassination, and now trying to find out more about the Robert Kennedy assassination as well, and making that information available to all of you through the website, through books and publications, and all sorts of other media. The Lancer people have been putting on a conference now to commemorate the anniversary of John Kennedy's death for several years now. The conference is continuing today and tomorrow downtown at the Adolphus Hotel. Hopefully you'll come on out and see and hear some remarkable speakers that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else. My name is Randy Owen. I'm the MC for the conference this year with Lancer. A little bit of background about me, and I'll make it very brief. I'm a Canadian broadcaster, and I have this message for all of you here. This is a sure sign that American democracy, it might have been bruised and battered over the years, but because the fact that you are here to commemorate this event shows that democracy does work. You are a beacon to the rest of the world. The event that happened here, although you might think it was an American tragedy, it was a tragedy for the entire world. And that's all I wanted to get across, and I think the main part of what I wanted to say. To further emphasize the point that this was indeed an international tragedy, our next speaker is the author of a book called No Case to Answer, a detailed look at the investigation that was done back in the 1963 period and 64 by the Dallas police. Would you please make welcome all the way from the United Kingdom, Mr. Ian Griggs.
Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of you have probably seen me before. I come here every year that I possibly can. I'm always dragged up here, and I'm always told, you're the international one, so you tell us how it affects the rest of the world. I'm in a small group. We're travelling together. I'm from London, England. We have an Italian, a Canadian with us, who's got a Dutch name. We have a Frenchman with us, and we've even got some Oklahomans with us. So we are mostly international, and we're very proud to be here. Let's get away from the frivolity. Randy and also even John Judge said that this was an international incident. He was your president. He wasn't my president, but he was our leader. He was the leader of the free world. You all know this. And when that event happened here, in this place, on the 22nd of November 1963, the world changed. Not just America, the whole world changed. It's not fully got back to normal yet, you know that. I'm a researcher. I'm seeking the truth of what happened here in this place at that time. We're getting there. I'm convinced there was a conspiracy. I can't prove it, none of us can, but we will. I'm proud to be the founder of a research group in the United Kingdom called Dealey Plaza, UK. We're 12 years old. We've grown from a bunch of guys talking about this incident in a pub. We're now international. We have members all over the world. We have our own seminar every year, which is like a mini version of JFK Lancer's annual conference. So please don't think this is just an isolated event that happened in this country and you're the only people interested in it and worried about it. that worry and interest spreads all over the world, and it always will, and I'll keep coming back to this place, despite the rocketing airfares, as often as I possibly can, and hope to be part of the group, whoever they may be, that finally solves this thing. I'm delighted to see you all here. It's a good turnout, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Next up, I'd like to ask Brian Edwards, Casey Quinlan to come on up. They are authors of another book, and it's called Beyond the Fence Line, the Ed Hoffman Story. For those of you who are wondering if there is anybody here who witnessed the events 45 years ago today. 45? What did I say? 35? Yeah, I'm young, thank you. 45 years ago today, Ed Hoffman was here, and he is here today as well, and I shall turn this over to, again, Brian and Casey.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank Deborah and Larry for allowing me to speak. I've never spoken to this on this occasion before, but I figured today would be the appropriate time, and I want to tell you a story about a remarkable man. Now you can see me cry better, thank you. A remarkable man who stands with us today, 45 years after the fact. A man dressed in a suit, I'm going to tell you this story. A man dressed in a business suit stood at that picket fence and fired a rifle in the direction of President Kennedy's motorcade as it traveled down Elm Street. Knowing the identity of that man is less important than knowing that that man was not Lee Harvey Oswald. Even today, our government continues to force the myth that all of the shots fired that day came from inside the Texas School Book Depository. One man knew the truth at 12:30. That man was Ed Hoffman. Some of you may not know about Ed Hoffman or what he saw take place behind that fence on November 22nd. Ed Hoffman stood on the side of Stemmons Freeway with an unobstructed view into the parking lot to the west of us. Ed watched the man at the fence point a rifle towards Elm Street. He saw a puff of smoke drift out from the fence near where this man was standing. 9 witnesses who stood in Dealey Plaza submitted affidavits or testified about seeing smoke coming from the same area immediately after hearing shots. How did Ed Hoffman know about smoke near the picket fence unless he was here himself? After firing his rifle, the man in the suit ran down the fence line towards the railroad tracks. Before reaching the tracks, the man suddenly stopped, tossed his murder weapon to another man who stood near one of the railroad switch boxes. The reason this man suddenly stopped running was because a large steam pipe blocked his path. From his position on Stemmons Freeway, Ed Hoffman did not know what had caused the man to stop running so abruptly, only that something made him stop. Ed Hoffman had never been to Dealey Plaza prior to that day. He did not know that there was a steam pipe that was separating the railroad tracks from the west end of the parking lot. From his elevated position on Stemmons Freeway, Ed watched as the president's motorcade traveled up the entrance ramp onto Stemmons. Ed saw a massive hole in the back right portion of President Kennedy's head. Ed Hoffman was the first civilian to see that. The doctors at Parkland at 5 minutes later verified that the back of the head was blown out. How did Ed Hoffman know where the president was wounded unless he saw it for himself? After tossing the murder weapon to his accomplice, the man in the suit the man who fired the rifle turned and walked towards the fence, where he was confronted at gunpoint by a uniformed Dallas police officer who had run into the area in response to hearing shots. Ed watched as this uniformed officer point his pistol directly at the man in the suit. Ed saw the man in the suit remove something from his suit coat, and the officer lowered his weapon and allowed the man to walk away. that officer, Joe Marshall Smith, testified to the Warrant Commission that the man he encountered produced credentials from his coat that showed him to be a United States Secret Service agent. The significance of that, no Secret Service agent was on the ground in Dealey Plaza. They were on the way to Parkland Hospital. How did Ed Hoffman know about this encounter unless he saw it for himself? After the president's vehicle passed Ed Hoffman's location, Ed tried to get the attention of a uniformed police officer who was stationed on top of the railroad bridge less than 100 yards north of where Ed had parked his car. As Ed ran towards the officer, the Secret Service follow-up car headed up the entrance ramp onto Stemmons Freeway. A man inside that follow-up car pointed a rifle directly at Ed as it sped up the ramp. 6 witnesses, including the 4 agents inside the car, verified that Agent George Hickey was handling an AR-15 assault rifle while the cars were still in Dealey Plaza. How did Ed Hoffman know there was an AR-15 in the car unless he saw it for himself? Everything Ed Hoffman saw between 12 noon and 12:35 has been corroborated by affidavits and sworn testimony. There are still some critics of Ed Hoffman as to whether he saw what he saw from Stemmons Freeway. If he was not where he said he was, how did he know that there was a uniformed police officer stationed on the railroad bridge over the top of Stemmons Freeway? How did he know there were people behind the picket fence acting suspiciously prior to, during, and after the assassination? A uniformed police officer did encounter a man dressed in a suit in the parking lot moments after the shooting. Secret Service agent was handling an AR-15 assault rifle in the follow-up car. The president had a massive wound in the back of his head. How did Ed Hoffman know any of this? The irony of this entire story is that the one man who could tell what happened can't speak and cannot hear. We are here today to speak for Ed Hoffman. We need to move past the myth that a single man hiding inside that building fired the shots that killed President Kennedy. Many of the people here today that were here that day believed at least one shot came from the area near the picket fence. 53 witnesses, many of who were law enforcement officers, submitted sworn affidavits or gave statements to the FBI that they heard shots coming from the picket fence area. My research partner, Casey Quinlan, and I have just completed our first book entitled Beyond the Fence Line, the eyewitness account of Ed Hoffman and the murder of President Kennedy. With your permission, we would like to present the first copy of that book to Mr. Hoffman. Thank you very much.
Do this. He can't hear you. Wave your hands.
That's it. If you guys want to clap for him, get your hands up like this. Let me summarize this thing up and we'll end it for our part and give it back. The state of Texas holds the keys to unlocking the truth in the murder of President Kennedy. More specifically, the city of Dallas has the legal jurisdiction to establish American justice and reclaim history. Ed Hoffman's eyewitness account is the cornerstone to the truth in this foundation of lies constructed by the Warren Report. The enforcement of this false premise was contracted out by the Dallas Police Department, the Dallas Sheriff's Office, the United States Secret Service, and fabricated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Painting this myth and glossing the cover-up came directly from the American print and electronic media. The perpetuation of this house of cards was structured in the propaganda issued by lawyers and journalists who hold the Warren Report as the self-evident truth that a lone gunman killed President Kennedy. Nothing could be further from the truth. The American public should know what the truth is about America's greatest murder mystery. Education is the answer. Reading the primary sources, examining the depositions of the Dallas police and the police archives, studying all eyewitness accounts, and drawing intellectual and logical conclusions should pave the way for the true American justice that we should have. We should not let false concepts and single bullet theories cloud the vision of all that we hold to be of value, the truth. In summation, I was wondering what Abraham Lincoln would think of Dealey Plaza 45 years after the murder of President Kennedy. 145 years ago, Abraham Lincoln gave his famous Gettysburg Address, November 19th. I think this is all befitting, and we rewrote this in honor of President Kennedy. 25 years ago, our government brought forth from this plaza the Warren Report, conceived in deception and dedicated to the proposition of creating a historical myth. We are now engaged in great civil debate, testing whether that report or any report so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are meeting in this historic place to continue this debate. We have come to dedicate this portion of Dealey Plaza, the grassy knoll, as a final resting place for those who have given their lives in seeking the truth. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this so that our nation might live. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the eyewitnesses, and the dedicated researchers who came here seeking the truth have consecrated this area far above our power to add or detract. The world should take note and long remember what we say. We should never forget what happened here. It is for us, the living, to dedicate ourselves to this unfinished task which they have sought to uncover and have so nobly presented. It is up to us to be here and to continue this undertaking which remains before us, that from the murder of President Kennedy, the eyewitnesses, and the historical implication of this crime, that we should pledge ourselves to dispel that myth and reveal this truth, the grassy knoll. We resolve that President John F. Kennedy shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of wisdom, and this government by the people, of the people, and for the people shall not relinquish its responsibility in the establishment of truth and justice. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the next part of the program, I would like to tell you that last night at the Lancer Conference, we had the privilege of hearing an original song in memory of the events that occurred here 45 years ago today. Would you please make welcome the gentleman who wrote this song? It's called The Torch is Passed. His name is Joey Granati.
Hello, before we start it, honey, this is for Ed Hoffman, and this is for Beverly Oliver, and James Tague, Aubrey Reich, the people that survived. Thank God they were in the right place at the right time. For all the evil that happened that day, God put the right people so we could take it where it had to go. This is for the young people in the crowd, because I wrote this song with Sherry Feaster from JFK Lancer. I started talking to her about this song, and I realized her knowledge trumped mine. And I said, Sherry, please help me with this song. So give her a hand. Sherry Feaster and I wrote the lyrics to this. This is for the spirit that will never die. The young people of the audience, please, the torch must pass. Once in a lifetime, so many hopes and dreams awaken within. He had charisma, such a bright mind. Oh, wait, let's start the disc. One second. We're going to start this over because we were having a compressor technical talk. Compressor squashing the CD. Hello, hello. Once in a lifetime, hopes and dreams awaken within. He had charisma and such a bright mind, a beacon we thought would never dim. But his brilliant flame, much too soon, was snuffed out by vicious and cold-hearted souls. A great future was denied, our nation cried, our innocence was lost along with his goals, his spirit and vision, no more lights. Two. Now that'll work. We're gonna start it one more time. Dreams are still alive. His legend will not end. The torch has been passed to light the fire once again. For truth and justice will see. There
You're too weak. Let's hear the sound. You gotta be close.
The gift to make you know that he cared. He was one for the ages, a profound and courage, whose elegance and grace were revered. By the hand of God, he came and changed our day. A man we loved who was ahead of his time. By the hand of man, he was taken away, but the dream and his light will forever shine. His spirit and vision was our hope and our life. His words still ring out and need no passion or rights. His strength and convictions, we will love his legacy. His dream we carry on for freedom and equality. He was here a brief moment, a favor, everybody. Hold up your hands now. This is a hymn. Let's create a wave in honor of our fallen king. Here's to the night of Camelot who stood for truth, for freedom, peace, service, and equality. The dream everlasting, the torch is past. His light will shine for eternity. He made us look at things we hadn't before. The good, the bad, the real. And he made the changes, what won't be denied. His torch held high the frontier. He discovered what worked in vain. Truth and justice for this great mind who inspired us in a magic moment in time. Man of peace who instilled in us that we are here to serve mankind. Let's look at what he's done and protect his history and live the dream of his words that challenged us individually. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Hold your hands up, shine. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Joey Granati, everybody. The torch is passed. I'd just like to say that probably the best lesson we can learn from this, from Joey's performance, if you're a researcher, if you want to find out more information about the Kennedy assassination, no matter what roadblock you come across, a censored document, somebody who won't talk, just keep at it. Thank you, Joey, for that message. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. He has been on this case almost since the day it happened. You can read more about what he has discovered over the years in a fascinating book that came out around 1991, I believe. A fascinating author, a great reporter, and his book is certainly one of the best ever written on the subject. So much so that even Oliver Stone said, I got to use this material to make my movie JFK. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please make welcome the author of several books, including Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy, Mr. Jim Marrs.
Thank you. Howdy. It's good to be with you today. Any of you here that are not Texans, welcome to the Lone Star State. And I hope that if nothing else, you're learning today that Lyndon Baines Johnson, George Herbert Walker Bush, and George W. Bush do not typify Texans. Some of us down here actually think.
I love it.
I've been told that nobody cares about the Kennedy assassination anymore. Look about you. It's not true. What else is not true? We were told that Lee Harvey Oswald could shoot 3 times from the 6th floor and hit twice on a target moving downhill laterally away from him because the trees were bare. I ask you, it's November the 22nd. Are those trees bare? No! And they weren't bare on November the 22nd, 1963. He had no line of sight into the street. We were told that Oswald's fingerprints were found on the rifle. is not true. The funeral home director said the FBI put the rifle in his dead hand, and only after that did the district attorney of Dallas mention, oh, have I mentioned to you, the media, that we've got his fingerprints on the rifle? All right, we were told that Jack Ruby had no connection to organized crime. Is that true? No. All right, basically, almost everything you've been told about the assassination is not true. So it is true. You're going to have to find that out. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a politician. I'm not asking for your belief. Okay? I'm asking you to study and think for yourself and to become an empowered American citizen. They call us conspiracy theorists. Well, listen, folks. If you can prove it, it's not a theory. That's right. Thank you.
Beautiful, Jimmy.
Wow. I wish I could speak like he does. I wish I could write like he does. Ladies and gentlemen, next up, another author who's worked on a fantastic book that I just had the opportunity to glance through just this morning. It's the subject of one of the people who was involved in that horrible story of what happened here 45 years ago. A fascinating book. It's called At the Door of Memory, Aubrey Reich and the Assassination of President Kennedy. He has something else that's a little bit different that doesn't have to do with the book. He's going to say something that I think will touch you in a very different way. Would you please make welcome author Colin McSween.
I'm also a Canadian. I'm very proud to represent our country. We felt a sincere, profound sense of personal loss when President Kennedy was killed. I was 9 years of age, having marked that day on October 17, 1963. I was homesick with the flu. My mother broke the news to me. I don't think anybody else could have handled it with me as well as she did. So I pay a tribute to my mother, and she's still with us. She's 85. But anyway, I'm also an actor. I'm also a mortician, also work in the coroner service in British Columbia, and do a number of other things. Father of 6, etc. Anyway, my grandfather, maternal grandfather, was a personal friend of Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, and John Diefenbaker had the honor of hosting President Kennedy's one and only state visit to Canada in May 1961, 1 month after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Of death, John F. Kennedy said, "I feel that death is the end of a lot of things. I just hope the Lord gives me the time to get all these things done. There is always inequity in life. Some men are killed in a war, some men are wounded, some men never leave the country. Life is unfair." Another statement he made, "I know there is a God and I see a storm coming. If he has a place for me, I believe that I am ready." The year before President Kennedy was born, a poet died in 1916 by the name of Alan Seeger. Alan Seeger wrote a poem called "I Have a Rendezvous with Death." In a quiet moment about a month and a half ago, this came to me and I typed it out as though President Kennedy were saying it to us from glory. God knows 'twere better to be deep, pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. But I had a rendezvous with death at noonday in a Texas town, when winter was staved off on yet a day so fair, and to my pledged word am true, I could not escape that rendezvous. I had a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade, when autumn melted to winter as I glided beneath a gently rustling shade, and live oak blooms filled the air. I had a rendezvous with death when late November yielded one last blue sky day and fair. In his mercy, he took my hand and led me into his bright land, and closed my eyes and quenched my breath. It was I who passed him still. I had a rendezvous with death as autumn had slipped away that year, and my last day was so bright and clear. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Colin. Ladies and gentlemen, I know, like I said earlier, that you're probably, a lot of you are wondering if there are other people that were here that day. Yes, I would like to introduce to you a lady who has written a remarkable book called A Nightmare in Dallas. And she was here that day, standing just across the street. And she is going to do something that is very rare. She's not going to talk about what if she wants to. I'll be more than happy to let her. But I would like to have her perform for you something very, very special. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please make welcome Beverly Oliver.
Of course, I do have to say one little something. Number one, those trees never lose their leaves. They are live oaks, Texas live oaks. They're green all the time. They were green November the 22nd, 1963. You know, I've had several people here today ask me why we come down here every year to do this. The majority of us that are down here to celebrate President Kennedy's life and to memorialize his ministry, his memory, and to honor his death. His blood still cries out on this ground that is hallowed to us who were here that day. And it always will. And I hope when we all leave here today that we leave here with a renewed commitment that he get justice. Because whatever we forget in life, people, we're doomed to repeat. And this must not ever be repeated. Not ever. And I can think of no more fitting song to ever share with you than this one. And you'll have to forgive my rough voice, but I'm still going to do it. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. But now I'm found, was blind, but now I see through many days.
One word, amazing. That was amazing. And actually another word actually comes to mind, courage. I don't know how you have found the courage to do what you do or do what you just did, but we are so blessed that you have that courage and you can share it with us. Thank you so much, Beverly Oliver. Before we wrap up, I would like to introduce to you one of the ladies responsible for JFK Lancer. As you can see the sign behind me, as they assist the research community. Would you please make welcome Deborah Conway.
Thank you all so much for being here today. I just have a couple of things I'd like to leave with you before we have our closing prayer, our special prayer that we do every year. I just want you to turn around and look at Elm Street. Just turn around, and I want you to imagine that you're waiting for President Kennedy's big navy blue, Kennedy blue limousine. It's right there on Houston Street, and you're yelling, "Mr. President, look over here." And you've got your camera, and you're looking at Jackie, and she is so beautiful, and she's smiling, and he's looking at her, and Governor Connolly's wife turns and says, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." And the car comes around the corner, and it keeps coming this way, and 45 years ago, right here in this place, he was killed. But his spirit is here, and I want to say to President Kennedy and to all of you that we know that Dallas and Texas and this country and the whole world loves you. Still love you. And we still care about the things that he thought about, that he cared about, and that he wanted to achieve. And you know what? He can't do that anymore, so you have to do it. 13 years ago, we started JFK Lancer as a way to get information out, and we were so lucky that at the same time we had the internet. And so 13 years later, we have websites, and we have email, and we have CD-ROMs and DVDs, and we have all this wonderful technology that not only didn't we have a few years ago, but President Kennedy did not have. There is nothing keeping us from getting his message out. There is nothing stopping you from studying this case and passing on your knowledge. There is nothing to keep you from demanding justice for yourself and for this country. If I can start this company and bring all of this together, you can too. You can do it too. And you must do it. Yes, you can. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today and for remembering President Kennedy. Now I'd like to introduce and have our closing prayer by Mr. Bob Cochran.
It's nice to see all of you. Is this working? It is my honor to once again lift up the spirit and memory of John F. Kennedy. This marks the 45th anniversary of his tragic demise. The world takes heed once more as his life and spirit is again remembered. John's spirit lives with vibrance, and his presence is magnetic. He stepped into the light as our president. He was not afraid to speak the truth to power. He sparred with generals and heads of state for the cause of peace and freedom. Camelot was created to light our way. In these dangerous times, let us never sacrifice the truth for the rebel of human folly. We must not forget our fallen king. Please bow your heads. O Holy One, help our passion speak for all to listen. Help us always fight for truth with justice by our side. Purify our cause this day, O Lord, to share the best of our generation with those we finally leave to carry on. Help us lead without compromise, knowing thy truth with understanding. Return our spirit of youth and innocence, that in its acquisition we may hold steadfast to the cause of peace with liberty and justice by its side. Let us leave here and not forget this tragedy, but instead ignite the eternal flame for all to love this one and future King. Those who come that are young and vibrant can carry this torch to a new generation. We can create John's dream of peace with each kind word that is spoken, along with an open mind that shares his vision and our hope for the future of our country and all mankind.
Amen. Thank you, Bob. Ladies and gentlemen, that just about concludes this part of the program. I want to invite you to again to come on down to the Adolphus Hotel on Commerce Street, where the JFK Lancer Conference will continue today and tomorrow. You will hear some remarkable speakers and see some remarkable evidence as well. Again, that's going on today and tomorrow. I would like to conclude with a few personal thoughts that, yes, we remember John F. Kennedy for what happened here 45 years ago today. keep in mind that we lost not only a president of the United States, a leader of the free world, he was also a husband, a father, a brother, and there were two other names I think we should remember as well. That was Officer J.D. Tippett and Lee Harvey Oswald. Whatever their roles were in this sordid story, we should always remember they were real people. They have real family members that were so traumatically impacted by what happened here 45 years ago today. I hope that's one thing that you take away from this and that you remember as well. I encourage you to research, do whatever you can to find out what happened and find the truth. And Beverly touched on this earlier, and I just wanted to repeat something about she said about history repeating itself. I never thought in my short lifetime that there would be two people by the name of John F. Kennedy who would die in their 40s. I never dreamed the space shuttle would be destroyed twice in my lifetime. I never dreamed that there would be a President George Bush twice. History apparently does repeat itself, and I think one of the most important things we can learn from the Kennedy assassination is that we must be on guard and make sure that this never does happen again. The best way I think to close this off is through the words that John F. Kennedy was supposed to deliver here in Dallas. We are the watchmen, and to wrap it up, the best way is to close off with the closing lines. Except the Lord keepeth the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
They just opened up a performance art piece. I'm not sure what purpose is, but
Oh, sorry about that.
no problem.
Okay.
It looks like John and Jackie a little bit, but not a whole lot. Is there any spokesperson for this exhibition? No.
Excuse me.
That's all right. Yeah, the reader's on it. So let's turn it on. So what's on this one?